Mickey Mouse was born on November 18, 1928, in the small town of Mouston, Calisota, a slice of seaside charm that loosely resembles the rolling hills and quaint, picturesque homes of Northern California. But like its cousin in the human-occupied American West, Calisota also harbored a seedy underbelly. Because just outside Mouston's city limits, crime and violence ran riot, fueled by Prohibition-era bootlegging, gun running, and underground speakeasies that defined life for mice and men in the roaring 1920s. Young Mickey was born into this world of contradictions, where idyllic suburbia stood in stark contrast to the chaos lurking on its fringes. And the future Disney star's home life was no less turbulent. Absentee parents left him with an unfillable hole in his heart. Their absence was so profound that Mickey's only memory of them is a faint silhouette as he made his way to and from the modest home where he laid his head to rest, in the early years before those big ears would become a shorthand for family-friendly entertainment and wholesome American values. But unlike the pixie dust and happy endings that were the hallmarks of his public life, Mickey's formative years were marked by tragedy and deep psychological wounds that festered in private. As he struggled to cope in the aftermath of his first encounter with Calisota's criminal element, Mickey's innocence was shattered by way of kidnapping. When his parents couldn't be bothered to watch him, the young rodent was sent to stay with his aunt, Melinda Mouse, in Bongo Village, a farming community on the outskirts of Mouston. On his first day there, young Mickey was ripped from his crib and held for ransom by two bandits, returned only when Melinda coughed up a valuable family heirloom to secure the boy's release. The trauma of that event followed Mickey into adulthood, manifesting in fainting spells and a debilitating drinking habit. Every night, he sought comfort at the bottom of a bottle, drowning the demons in his head with illegal moonshine, hardening his heart in ways that would shock even the most devoted Disney diehards. Because underneath that bubbly, squeaky-voiced exterior adored by millions lies a different breed of rodent. A cunning, relentless survivor, warped by rage and an insatiable hunger for the love and adoration he was denied as a child. With no living role models to guide him through the fallout of such profound rejection, Mickey drew inspiration from a surprising source, his great-grandfather, Albemarle Mouse. Albemarle was a legendary figure on the Mouse family tree, a gunslinger who roamed the Wild West with an itchy trigger finger and a thirst for adventure, not setting down his pistols until he discovered a vein of gold that made him rich. Albemarle was long dead before Mickey ever took his first breath. But these stories of his escapades lit a fire inside the future icon, providing an endless supply of fuel that he would shamelessly exploit as he clawed his way to a destiny greater than any mouse before him. Unbeknownst to most Mickey maniacs today, the House of Mouse was built on the foundation laid by his great-grandfather he never knew. Its walls fortified with guns, knives, the brute force of Mickey's signature white mitts, and even demonic incantations that spread his influence across all media like an unstoppable infestation, ensuring that Mickey Mouse would never be ignored again.
We've got a bit of an infestation here at the storage facility. We thought it was just rodents, but there's something else in here.
Yo, guys. Guys, right behind you. It's Mickey Mouse.
That is creepy. What is wrong with him? He's got mental problems. Yo, you gotta chill out, Mickey.
These costumes are super freaky, but you can tell that they maybe had their best intentions. I'm not really sure. Some of these are really weird looking.
Well, for film buffs, horror has a new name. It's Mickey Mouse.
Gina, turn around, please! Oh, Mickey, you can trust me, sweet mouse. Step right this way. They shall trust down in my house.
Welcome to Horror History, the happiest show on earth if rodent-funded Vekoma rides and a streaker who looks like Howard Stern are your idea of happy. Today I'll be analyzing the entire known history of the Big Cheese himself, the most popular of Walt Disney's many creations, Mickey Mouse. There's not really an official canon for this character, but there's a surprising amount of depravity in the real Mickey media that's been published across cartoons, comic strips, and movies over the past 97 years since the world's first introduction to the most beloved rodent ever to walk on two legs. Sorry, Chucky. I don't imagine this video being very popular with Mickey's corporate overlords, but hey, someone had to spill the cheese.
Leave the f***ing cheese there, all right? I love f***ing cheese at my feet.
Mickey Mouse is the smiling face of a family-first billion-dollar empire that includes international theme parks, cruise lines, hotels. You already know who he is, so why am I even explaining? But behind that perpetual grin lies a disturbing tale of ruthless ambition and unhealed wounds, masked by the carefully crafted illusion of events like Mickey's not-so-scary Halloween party, where faux frights are used as a smokescreen to hide the true horrors the Walt Disney Corporation doesn't want you to see. Mickey Mouse wasn't the first mascot that Walt Disney created. That honor went to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, a character that he and his business partner, Ub Iwerks, were commissioned to ink and animate for Universal Studios at the time brand new animation wing. The troublemaking rabbit with long floppy ears and detachable limbs became an overnight sensation, and the star of more than 24 animated shorts. But during talks with top brass at Universal, Disney was shocked to find the studio had poached his entire team behind his back, offering them lucrative contracts to leave Disney's studio and work for them instead. Because Oswald was already a proven commodity, Universal didn't need Disney anymore. They owned the character and his work, and politely showed him the door. Walt Disney and his fledgling studio were on the brink of financial ruin, but in the darkest hour, Iwerks, the most talented and visionary member of Disney's original team, refused the Universal deal. Heartened by Ub's display of loyalty, Walt began cooking up ideas for a new character that he would own outright. Inspiration struck when he remembered a small mouse that he'd adopted as a pet in his early days as an animator in Kansas City, Missouri. Instead of recoiling or reaching for a shoe to swat it away, Disney was charmed by the rodent. He tore a crumb from his sandwich and set it down, delighted when the mouse gave it a nibble. The mouse became a recurring visitor, creeping in uninvited, but always welcome. Over time, Disney gave it a name, and that name was Mortimer. The happy memory infested Disney's mind, gnawing at the edges of his imagination until a powerful idea emerged. The instrument of his retribution would be a cartoon mouse. There was only one problem. Walt's wife, Lillian, hated the name. She thought it sounded too depressing. Maybe she thought it was too close to mortis, the Latin word for death. Given how things played out, as you'll see in this video, maybe it would have been appropriate. The woman named after that platform that a frog stands on urged her husband to find something more cheerful, something a little more playful, a name that popped off the tongue and was fun to say. She suggested Walt try Mickey instead. In this video, I will operate under the assumption that the animated shorts are adaptations or exaggerations of the real Mortimer's adventures. And to fully understand how the mouse truly got his ears in his quest to infiltrate every corner of the collective consciousness, we have to scurry all the way back to his first animated outing. Mickey Mouse officially debuted on May 15, 1928 in a silent cartoon called Plane Crazy. Inspired by Charles Lindbergh's first ever non-stop flight from New York to Paris just 1 year prior, the plucky mouse attempts his own test flight, but the results are disastrous. He enlists the help of Minnie Mouse on his next attempt, but the frisky pilot gets a little too handsy for Minnie's liking once they're airborne. When his unwanted advances are rejected, Mickey flies the plane erratically, hoping to scare Minnie into a kiss. She declines, he kisses her anyway, and gets slapped right before Minnie jumps out of the plane in protest. While Minnie does survive the jump thanks to cartoon logic, that doesn't change the fact that Mickey's first foray into the public eye is marred by reckless flying and sexual assault.
Just isn't right. You can't do that.
Just one animated adventure in, Mickey already displays a penchant for unhinged aggression, impulsiveness, and mortal danger in the name of a cheap thrill. At least that's how it appears on the surface, but I think there's some deeper psychology at play here. Sure, Mickey wants that kiss, but what he really wants is fame. The Charles Lindbergh connection practically screams it to the viewer, which explains his next cartoon adventure, the beloved classic Steamboat Willie. Just 6 months after his plane crash, Mickey sets his sights on a new thrill and a more stable mode of transportation. Determined as ever to make his mark on the world, he signs on to work as a deckhand on a steamboat. If the skies won't carry the tales of his exploits, then he'd spread his legend sailing the seas of consequence. Willie is notable for its use of synchronized sound, one of the first cartoons in history to integrate music and sound effects with animated visuals. It's also notable for inspiring a Willie-themed slasher film called Screamboat more than 90 years after Disney and Iwerks unveiled their original, far less bloody version to the public.
I heard stories about a monster that lurked in the underbelly of the ferry, Steamboat Willie.
More on that later. For anyone who thinks a man-sized mouse with an appetite for murder is a bogus premise for a horror movie, I encourage you to take a closer look at the 1928 original. The tune is bursting at the seams with hair-raising imagery that's ripe for the slasher treatment, and it's all hiding right there in plain black and white. First, there's the unsettling redesign of Mickey's character. Those big expressive eyes from Plane Crazy are long gone, replaced by black, vacant saucers, his big grin a camouflage to distract us from his empty stare. Not unlike another American psycho, Patrick Bateman. And once you add a set of mouse ears, that lifeless gaze fits just as easily on a serial-killing investment banker as it does on America's favorite mouse. Then there's the overt sadism and flagrant animal cruelty on display at every turn. In just under 8 minutes, Mickey manages to kidnap a malnourished cow, crank a goat's body out of alignment, stretch a goose's throat, swing a cat by its tail, kick a baby piglet and violently poke its mother's udders, and kill a bird with a potato. Mickey plays each animal like a living musical instrument, their pained screams like notes sung by the devil's choir. Which begs the question, why did Disney and iWorks choose this symphony of screams as the subject of their first ever Mickey Mouse cartoon with synchronized sound? Not long after Steamboat Willie premiered, Mickey changed his look yet again. From 1929 on, Mickey was never seen in public without a distinct set of white gloves on his hands. Not once are they ever removed.
Have you ever wondered that why everyone in Mickey Mouse wear gloves?
What are you hiding, Mickey? Got some stains on those paws you don't want us to see? One speculated reason behind the gloves was to personify him, make him seem more human. It makes sense. Mickey was ambitious but reckless. Left unchecked, his more chaotic tendencies might undercut his budding popularity. Mickey's handlers were reining in their prized mascot, but this mouse was not so easily tamed.
Woof! You don't talk to me like that! You little piece of shit!
Rejecting the orders laid down by his corporate masters, Mickey Mouse wandered into the country on his own, raising hell and courting death. His pursuit of immortality veered into the paranormal with the release of The Haunted House in December of 1929. The cartoon begins with Mickey caught in a storm. Desperate for shelter, he wanders into a derelict house where he's terrorized by dancing skeletons and a ghostly hooded figure who makes him confront his worst fears, or perhaps a guilty conscience, like the symphony of screams Mickey orchestrated in Steamboat Willie. The frightened mouse is forced to settle his debts to the Reaper.
Play! I can't play. Play!
Mickey does exactly as he's told, and a haunting melody echoes through the crumbling walls. The skeletons parade around the house, taunting Mickey, chasing him from room to room. Eventually, Mickey jumps out a window and runs off into the night, permanently scarred by his experiences in the house. After the haunted house made the rounds, Mickey's rebellious streak collapsed under the weight of his own dread. He was a new mouse, now finally willing to obey the wishes of his creative parents and turn over a new slice of cheese. But the taste was bitter. By the time he reunited with his animators, Walt Disney and iWorks, the business partners were itching to dissolve their relationship.
Hey, you got a Mickey Mouse on the bill today?
No, not today.
What? No Mickey Mouse?
No Mickey Mouse.
Why?
iWorks began to feel stifled under Disney's relentless control and increasing ambition. The tensions reached a breaking point when iWorks, furious at Disney for taking all the credit for Mickey's creation, decided to leave the studio in 1930 to form his own outfit. Like a child caught between two parents in a messy divorce, Mickey was overcome by sadness, confusion, and explosive anger.
Oh, that does it!
Not long after the split, Mickey's career turned a page as he set out to infest a new medium with his influence, comic strips. But unlike his animated adventures, these stories had more edge, infused with all the pent-up fire and spite that he carried after the dust-up between Disney and iWorks. I guess the gloves came in handy here, because this is where it gets messy. From the moment we see his first thought bubble printed on the page, comic strip Mickey is rubbing elbows and fists with mobsters and kidnappers, holding spies at gunpoint, being wanted for bank robbery, matching wits with Peg-Leg Pete on the hunt for gold, and he even takes up boxing. But it's Mickey's mouth that does most of the damage in this format. Every comic ups the wisecracking by about 200% compared to his animated shorts. The mouse has quips for days, and the occasional squirt of venom that would sound ridiculous if you ever heard it spoken in Mickey's signature high-pitched falsetto. Like this moment where he gives a man-sized cat the boot as he unloads this zinger of a line.
Well, here's a goodie for you, and I've got another one just like it for Mr. Nip, the big cream puff inhaler.
But his fiery attitude might be a sign of his deeper psychological scars. In what might be the single darkest piece of official Mickey Mouse media to date, the Disney mascot follows this string of thrill-seeking mayhem with not one, not two, but 5 separate attempts after he mistakenly believes that Mickey is hooking up with a city mouse named Mr. Slicker. After being rejected by his birth parents, distraught over the breakup of his creative parents, and now stung by what he thinks is a betrayal from his girl, Mickey nearly puts himself in the mousetrap. none of his attempts are successful. His shotgun misfires, his bridge jump is cut off by a boat, he chickens out of drowning himself because the water is too cold, his self-imposed carbon monoxide poisoning is interrupted by another rodent, and he's finally pulled out of his depressive state after being cheered up by the squirrels living in the tree that he was gonna hang himself in. To put it in Mickey's own words, it took a squirrel to prove what a nut I was. And given his weekly routine, that might be true.
Look, I just want my ears to look nice and round from every angle, so that's why I have them starched every week.
So were these comics a cry for attention? Or did Mickey really want to end it all? I can't say for sure, but I have a squeaking suspicion that Mickey's multiple brushes with self-annihilation, along with a few real-life tragedies that we'll get into later in this video, may have inspired one of the most enduring creepypastas ever conceived, Suicidemouse.avi.
Okay. I hate this. Oh, I'm getting the chills.
After trying and failing miserably to off himself, the melancholy mouse had a new lease on life, and he wasn't about to waste it. Mickey reacquainted himself with his ambition, channeling his energy into a sharper, more focused push for global infestation. But if Mickey was going to win over hearts and minds on the scale of the world, he'd have to become more than a mouse. He'd have to become a symbol, with an army of foot soldiers willing and eager to spread a message, his message, one that would transcend culture and geography. The answer was simple: merchandise. The 1930s officially marked Mickey's cheddar era. He began putting his face on every piece of retail that would have him. The first piece of Mickey merchandise in history was a notepad with the Disney star gracing the front cover. Soon after, Mickey's face was on lunchboxes, music boxes, coin banks, watches, pendants, bracelets, underwear, and even an ashtray. We'll blame Minnie for that one.
Minnie Mouse smoking.
So far, all of this sounds pretty typical, right? Popular character becomes merch happy once the big bucks start rolling in. Well, personally, I wouldn't be caught dead trying to push high quality products like the CZsWorld like pillow, CZsWorld minimalist pocket tee, My Life is a Horror movie shirt, or the CZsWorld modern hoodie. But for Mickey, it wasn't just about the money. There was something deeper at play. Something dangerous that transcended mere profit. Something evil. The first wave of stuffed animals that bore the mouse's likeness shattered more than a few childhoods thanks to distorted features, a misshapen smile, and those lifeless, beady eyes. What kind of child sees that and thinks, yep, that's what I want to snuggle up with at night? Now, you could chalk it up to the times. Mass-producing children's toys and plushies in the 1930s wasn't as precise as what we have today. Maybe the stitching wasn't as consistent, which led to more distortions. But still, I'd like to posit a different theory. The creepy Mickey dolls look off because they're based on the real Mickey. We're just catching a glimpse of the mouse's true nature leaking out through every crooked, big-toothed smile and unsettling stare. Kind of like the black-eyed Ronald McDonald dolls that I talked about in the Ronald Horror History episode. This is Mickey's real face, warped by fame, ambition, and a compulsive lust for pop culture domination. To conceal his true intentions, Mickey used children as camouflage, peddling his message in broad daylight right under their parents' noses. The toys and trinkets weren't enough. Mickey wanted them to literally wear his face. Using grotesque masks and costumes molded in his own likeness, millions of young boys and girls transformed into walking manifestations of his dark agenda, gleefully marching along in service to the mouse's ever-growing army. Soon, the parents were infected with Mickey mania too, compelled to don the big ears themselves in freakish displays of unhinged devotion. Yes, these were real costumes that actual humans wore unironically. Apparently this was a quote-unquote responsible adult's idea of a good time. The outbreak even touched people without kids. No one was safe.
Disney adults are horrifying creatures.
Walt Disney is God. You are his lamb. Now, go into any given store and consume products as soon as you possibly can.
Soon, Mickey Mouse clubs sprung up all over America, with members joining up by the hundreds of thousands to gather at local theaters every Saturday and watch Mickey cartoons with like-minded mega fans. Invitations were spread by courier, and adoring members flooded Mickey HQ with heaps of fan mail, thanking the Master Mouse for filling their lives with so much joy. And Mickey, ever the gracious idol, was more than happy to oblige, spending countless hours on his throne of fan letters, sniffing the ink, reveling in their devotion like a junkie with a bottomless craving. Mickey wasn't content with simply being loved. He demanded worship. I mean, just look at these photos. Not an empty seat in the house. A fandom as loyal and evangelical as any congregation packed into a stadium-sized megachurch. Not to mention the sea of haunting masks, a ghoulish sight that confirms my suspicions about Mickey Mouse being more cult leader than mascot, on par with, say, Charles Manson or Jim Jones. Maybe Dole Whip is the modern Kool-Aid.
Just because I was indoctrinated as a child, I ignore all the bad parts about it and yield fully to its influence over me does not mean I'm in a cult.
I just like it, okay? Real life is stressful, and Mickey Mouse isn't. I like Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse likes you too. So much, in fact, that he became obsessed with tightening his stranglehold on the world. After a while, when bodies and minds wouldn't satisfy him any longer, the icon vowed to go deeper, looking for ways to forge an eternal bond that would transcend death itself. Left with no other option, Mickey Mouse sought forbidden knowledge in the realm of the occult.
I'm a roaring, tearing wizard when it comes to cutting up. I can grab the chicken's gizzard on the wishbone of a pup.
In the 1933 short, The Mad Doctor, Mickey's search for arcane wisdom leads him to a gothic castle carved into the side of a mountain, the kind of architecture that would make Victor Frankenstein jealous. Mickey navigates a treacherous path in hopes of gaining an audience with the Mad Doctor, but the doc has no interest in Mickey. He wants Pluto, Mickey's dog. More specifically, he wants to put Pluto's head onto the body of a chicken to see if a puppy will hatch from the egg. Yes, because that's definitely something we need to know as a society. Thank you, Mr. Mad Doctor. Anyway, when Mickey tries to save his pup, he ends up in the doc's clutches and quickly finds himself strapped to a torture device, staring down the bleeding edge of a spinning saw. There is something kind of uncanny about seeing Mickey strapped down under a saw blade screaming for his life like something out of 007 or Saw. Most movie theater owners of the day felt the same way, refusing to show the cartoon, believing it was too scary for kids, while England went a step further and banned it outright. After the film's release, Mickey claimed to have no memory of the pivotal torture scene. When pressed for details, Mickey would break into a cold sweat and lash out, shouting "Toodles" as he stormed out of the room. Mickey and his team immediately ran damage control, placing Mickey in his first ever live-action film, March of the Wooden Soldiers, the following year in 1934. They hoped that Mickey's surprise appearance would deflect attention away from the troubled short, but the soldiers' cameo only made things worse. Ignore for a moment the fact that Mickey throwing a brick at his feline co-star's head was not in the script, and the fact that he collapses in what looks like a knockdown drunken stupor, awkwardly clapping his hands like someone who's never done it before. What really rankled the public was his appearance, deeply unnerving, almost like a knockoff version of his former self with beady eyes and jerky, almost puppeteered movements. His eerie silence the entire time only added to speculation about his well-being. Longtime fans were left scratching their heads and reaching for the nearest crucifix. Later in the film, when Mickey pilots a mouse-sized blimp and rains down bombs during a pivotal battle scene, some audience members bolted for the exits. After filming wrapped, Mickey retreated from the public eye, still rattled by his experience on The Mad Doctor. Fans and critics didn't know it at the time, but his erratic, unusual appearance in Soldiers was a cry for help. But the press was more concerned about his image as a role model. An op-ed in the New York Times titled "The Censor" sought to remind the beloved mouse of what the acceptable rules of engagement were.
That vivacious rodent of the animated screen cartoons must lead a model life on the screen to meet the approval of censorship boards all over the world. Mickey does not drink, smoke, or cut any suggestive capers. Walt Disney, his creator, must be hypercritical of his own work to avoid wounding various national dignities.
Clearly, this person wasn't paying attention because Mickey has done plenty of drinking, smoking, and suggestive capering up to this point. Still, Walt Disney took those words to heart, afraid the controversy might dry up the money fountain built by Mickey's runaway success. He devised a plan to course-correct the downward trajectory of his wayward star. He would draw up a new character, the anti-Mickey, someone who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty and sling a little mud from time to time. A character that would be celebrated precisely because he zigged where the mouse was expected to zag. His name was Donald Duck.
The duck came along as a result of too many taboos put onto Mickey Mouse. People didn't feel that Mickey could blow his top like the duck. In other words, he had to maintain a certain dignity. So in order to give ourselves the latitude, we created this little duck. This is terrible-tempered Mr. Duck.
Put another way, Disney's writers and animators wanted a vessel to channel their more risque ideas, and Donald was brought in like a mischievous younger sibling who was free to misbehave, while Mickey, the golden child, was burdened with perfection.
Always remember to count 10 when your anger rises.
Someone please tell me I'm not the only one who sometimes mixes up Donald Duck and Daffy Duck. Always makes me feel stupid. Despite Donald's arrival on the scene to save Mickey from himself, the temptation to dabble in the occult proved too strong to resist. Mickey still found himself starring in a string of questionable shorts in the back half of the 30s, each one more bizarre than the last. In Through the Mirror, Mickey astral projects, leaving his body and traveling into an alternate dimension where inanimate objects come to life and attack, trying to keep him trapped inside the mirror world for good. He ups the ante in The Lonesome Ghosts, where he starts a ghost exterminator agency and enlists the help of Donald and their dim-witted friend Goofy, a dog who is for some reason not domesticated like Mickey's dog Pluto, which is probably a disturbing story in its own right. This one is on the official Mickey Mouse YouTube channel, and they put this pattern behind the video to pillar box or fill the extra space left by the change to a modern aspect ratio. Does anyone else think this pattern just looks like drops of blood in the shape of Mickey's head? It's not even just a Halloween thing. All of the retro Mickey cartoons on the channel have this. Like, what kind of sick ritual is this? Many classic shorts were kept off the channel and out of the public eye by the Walt Disney Corporation though, which brings us to The Worm Returns. In this one, Mickey continues his quest to unlock otherworldly secrets, taking a cue from the Mad Doctor himself. The iconic rodent develops a super serum called Courage Builder that augments the strength of any creature it touches. However, these edgier shorts were more like rare exceptions. The recent inclusion of Donald Duck, coupled with Walt Disney's attention being drawn away with new projects like Pinocchio and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, left the world's most famous mouse feeling sidelined. Mickey's fascination with the occult hit a new peak in the 1940 film Fantasia. Filled with apocalyptic visions that seared the eyes of anyone who bought a ticket, the film's most infamous sequence, Night on Bald Mountain, showcased Mickey's true capacity for darkness. A chiller of a score punctuates the appearance of the towering demon Chernobog, named after the Slavic word for dark god. It spreads its colossal wings, casting a shadow over the entire village as it conjures hellfire and summons evil spirits who dance and twirl around the creature, gleefully psychotic in their depravity. The sequence was so disturbing, audiences of the day cried foul and ignited a satanic panic over Disney's apparent slide into full-blown devil worship. This is something that as a kid, I remember other kids being afraid of. Mickey's brief appearance in the film only fueled more speculation. A sequence called The Sorcerer's Apprentice shows the Disney mascot studying black magic under a sorcerer named Yen Sid, Disney spelled backwards. That detail may seem like an insignificant Easter egg, but concealing hidden messages through backwards writing has been a staple of demonic practice for centuries. Also known as mirror writing, or in the case of music recordings, backward masking, its supernatural associations stem from the way that it inverts normal communication, a disruption of the natural order.
I love this stuff.
I command you in the name of Lucifer to spread the blood of the innocent.
Oh my God, Chicago kicks ass.
Later in the segment, Disney dons Yen Sid's hat and experiments with ancient spells far beyond his wizarding skill level, and all hell breaks loose. Mickey unwittingly animates an army of broomsticks who flood the chamber with overturned buckets of water, until the wizard, Yen Sid, steps in to save his overwhelmed apprentice from himself. After the controversy surrounding Fantasia and its alleged air of Satanism, Mickey was desperate to show his detractors that he still possessed the same charm and goodness that first captivated fans more than a decade prior. A sobering dose of real-world horror provided the perfect opportunity. On December 7th, 1941, Japan launched a surprise military attack on Pearl Harbor, claiming more than 2,000 American lives and catapulting the United States into World War II. Sensing a tectonic shift in the national mood, Mickey Mouse wasted no time. The very next day, he ditched his wizarding robe and traded his book of spells for a different kind of magic, the stars and stripes of American patriotism. Within 24 hours of the attack, half of Walt Disney's Burbank, California studio was under the command of military personnel, who used the space to house troops and vehicles. But the studio's most important contribution to the war effort was propaganda. When the Imperial Japanese Army and the armed forces of Nazi Germany entered the field of battle, they would see Mickey's face plastered on the sides of American fighter planes and tanks. The mouse's signature ears and wide grin would be used like war paint, a symbol meant to inspire confusion and fear in the hearts of enemy combatants. Mickey's likeness was also featured heavily on posters and signage promoting the war effort, elevating the star to new heights as not just Disney's mascot, but America's mascot. Practically overnight, Mickey's face became a symbol of American exceptionalism, inspiring citizens to remain vigilant and united in the face of this unprecedented danger. Warped by the momentum of his rising stardom, Mickey Mouse dreamed up new, outlandish ways to cement his influence even deeper into the public consciousness. It was subtle at first. Mickey's face quietly adorned the pins on Air Force flight jackets and patches on the uniforms of military mechanics. He also made blink and you'll miss it cameos in cartoon PSAs.
Don't throw away that bacon grease. Housewives of America, one of the most important things you can do is to save your waste kitchen fats. We and our allies need millions of pounds of fats to help win the war. For fats make glycerin, and glycerin makes explosives. Your pound of waste fat will give some boy at the front an extra clip of cartridges.
But as time went on, his subtle efforts became more overt, and the result was kinda nightmare fuel. None more jarring or bizarre than a series of mass-produced gas masks for children. The sales pitch was simple. The prospect of chemical warfare breaking out on American soil was a credible threat. In response, the US military provided civilian gas masks to the public in case of an attack. But when children expressed anxiety about wearing the strange-looking masks, the military cooked up ways to redesign them so they'd be less frightening for little Billy and Cindy on Main Street. Mickey saw an opening and pounced, offering up this totally not scary design instead. When droves of children recoiled at the sight of this kid-friendly instrument of war, Disney quickly scrubbed Mickey from the propaganda playbook, with the mouse forced to watch from the sidelines once again, as supporting characters like Donald Duck and Goofy were pushed to center stage. When the war ended in 1945, Mickey spiraled out of control. He'd flown too close to the sun, basked in its warmth for just a moment, and then crashed back down to Earth. Raging against what he considered a fickle fan base, he resorted to petty crime, burglarizing homes and storefronts, running smash and grab jobs with shady characters, smoking opium, even recruiting Goofy to help him sell speed on the black market. This detour into lawlessness ate up several years of his life. But even in his darkest moments, the mouse spent countless hours envisioning a return to the spotlight. The attention from movies and cartoons was fleeting. Mickey needed something permanent, a world where he made all of the rules, where he'd have the love and devotions of his fans captured forever. This grand vision became a reality on July 17th, 1955 in Anaheim, California, with an assist from Uncle Walt himself.
Welcome. I guess you all know this little fella here. It's an old partnership. Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream. Disneyland.
The happiest place on Earth, as it came to be known, was more than just an amusement park. Disneyland was a meticulously designed kingdom where Mickey reigned supreme. A place built in his image spanning 5 distinct lands where fans could lose themselves in a dreamscape brought to life. And all it cost was just $1. Kids got in for 50 cents. Not $200. Every inch of the park reinforced Mickey's dominance, from the towering castle at its heart to the countless hidden Mickey ears woven into the architecture, a subtle yet constant reminder of his influence, each pair like a mini shrine to his own legend.
I don't have time to talk, Goofy. I'm late meeting Minnie, and I've lost my ears. Have you seen them?
What?
From the start, the park was wickedly effective, luring more than 30,000 people inside its gates on opening day, with a staggering 90 million watching the opening ceremonies from home, an immediate success that laid the groundwork for Phase 2 of Mickey's master plan. Later that year, in October of 1955, television audiences witnessed the launch of the Mickey Mouse Club, an hour-long variety show that introduced the world to the Mouseketeers, a merry band of child performers in mouse ears who danced, told jokes, and sang ominous songs that chilled the blood.
Sing our song and join our family.
I can't tell if they're being indoctrinated or trying to indoctrinate us. Blink twice if you need help. They even have their names sewn into their shirts so Mickey can keep track of whose soul he's feeding on. Sharon's really got that Dolores Umbridge head tilt going on. You might hear join our family, but I hear one of us, one of us. The show's modern day offshoot, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, which debuted in 2006, may not be as overtly spooky in the way that it drills obedience into young minds, but it's certainly no more subtle. At the top of every episode, Mickey demands that viewers recite a chant before granting them access to the clubhouse. Don't be fooled by the goofy grin on his face. This odd ritual screams narcissism, as does the fact that he had the clubhouse built in his own image.
To make the clubhouse appear, we get to say the magic words. Say it with me. Miska, Muska, Mickey Mouse.
As much as I find the cultish behavior operating under the guise of family values kinda creepy, the strategy worked. By indoctrinating America's youth in the millions in the comfort of their own homes, television conditioned audiences to smile big, follow orders, and blindly trust in the magic of Mickey. But just like we saw in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, it was a magic Mickey would soon lose control of, ushering in a new nightmare of his own making.
We feel very privileged and honored to have a man with us who has given us probably more entertainment than any other single person in the world. He's the man who created this fabulous park across the way. He gave us so graciously his Musketeers today for our show. What more can I say? The one and only Walt Disney.
Bonnie, thank you. That was a lovely introduction.
Disneyland's introduction to the world gave Walt's golden child, Mickey Mouse, unparalleled reach and influence. Just 1 year after its splashy opening, the park welcomed 5 million visitors. Through the first half of the 1960s, millions more made the pilgrimage to Anaheim, drawn by the park's ever-expanding roster of attractions and the chance to worship at the Mouse's feet. But Mickey demanded more than just smiles and laughter. When adoration and praise grew stale as week-old cheese, the Mouse developed a craving for human blood. In 1964, Disneyland claimed its first victim on the Swiss Yeti-themed roller coaster Matterhorn Bobsleds. A 15-year-old boy was killed after hearing this message.
Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened.
Deciding not to do that, and instead removing his lap belt to stand up, where he was then struck on his head by the side of the snow-capped mountain. Park officials believed that the aerodynamics coaster was traveling at about 20 miles per hour at the point of impact. When paramedics arrived at the scene, the boy was unconscious. He was rushed to a hospital with severe head trauma, where he died 4 days later. Because the boy didn't officially die on park grounds, Disneyland maintained its spotless safety record, a technicality that fueled disturbing whispers about Mickey and his minions, a twisted theory that death would simply not be tolerated at the happiest place on Earth. While one might assume that keeping the Disney name out of any coroner's reports was just good PR, maybe it was Mickey's earlier dabbling in the occult that inspired this policy, knowing just how out of hand things can get at a haunted location. The incident was quickly forgotten, the Matterhorn reopened, and all was right again. But a personal tragedy would soon bring the Maine Mouse to his knees. In 1966, Mickey Mouse suffered a loss he'd never recover from, try as he might. The man who gave him life and love, the man who built an empire at his side, Walter Elias Disney, had died. The world-famous showman's official cause of death was lung cancer, the byproduct of a decades-long smoking habit. But Mickey knew his business partner was already on borrowed time. Disneyland had become a living, breathing monument to obsessive devotion, sustained on the misery of its visitors and staff, and the Mouse was its greatest beneficiary. Like all dark gifts, it didn't come without a price. And just 11 years after the park's opening, the piper had come to collect. Or, you know, maybe Walt should have just taken his own advice and stopped smoking. In the aftermath of Walt's death, Mickey seemed to regress into a state of depression, attempting to retreat from the public eye. First, he commissioned the construction of elaborate underground tunnels that ran beneath the park, secret passageways connecting Tomorrowland, Frontierland, Fantasyland, and Adventureland. These allowed Mickey to move unseen to and from each zone, avoiding the prying eyes of guests. Imagine you're a cast member getting off your shift. You think you're the last one to leave, but then you hear the footsteps. You feel the pit in your stomach. No, it can't be him. But then you see the familiar silhouette appear at the end of the liminal corridor. Your only option is to push forward and just hope he doesn't violently lash out at you. According to legend, those poor unfortunate souls unlucky enough to draw the Mouse's wrath all faced the same fate: extermination. Some might argue that this was all just made-up stories. After all, how could a large entertainment corporation hide all of those bodies without raising suspicion? On March 18, 1967, Mickey unveiled his next attraction, Pirates of the Caribbean. Originally envisioned as a wax museum by Mickey and his dark team of Imagineers, the idea was scrapped in favor of a boat ride that led guests through a three-dimensional, swashbuckling adventure filled with pirate ships, animatronic puppets, multiple drops, treasure chests, and skeletons made of real human bones. According to multiple valid sources, when the ride first opened, real remains were hidden in plain sight, woven into the scenery, their bones reused as props, their skulls trapped in eternal grins. In essence, they had all been transformed into perfect employees, never complaining, never taking time off, working tirelessly in service of the Mouse's twisted vision forever. Guests complained of a strange unease, so to dispel the rumors, the company issued an official cover story. Technology of the time wasn't sophisticated enough to make fake skeletons that met the Disney company's standards of realism. So instead of faking it, they purchased skeletons that were donated to UCLA's medical center. As soon as the fake skeleton technology improved, the bones were supposedly replaced with replicas, and the human bones were then shipped back to their countries of origin and given proper burials. But former Disney cast members say otherwise.
In Pirates, there is a real skull. It's actually in the captain's quarters. It's the skull on the headboard right above the bed. It's the only one that I know of that's real. I've heard there are 2 more, but I haven't found them yet.
As scrutiny over pirates picked up steam, Mickey sought protection from high society. People of power, influence, and immense wealth who could help protect the park's most damning secrets. To entice this network of elite clientele, he created Club 33, an exclusive top-secret lounge hidden in an upstairs suite on Royal Street in New Orleans Square, where Pirates is located. In June of 1967, Club 33 offered private dining and extravagant amenities that attracted heads of state, titans of industry, and celebrities of all stripes. Essentially, this was Disney's very own take on the Illuminati, and Mickey was its most powerful central figure. Now, emboldened by the backing of his wealthy Club 33 cohort, Mickey pushed for the addition of a new Disneyland attraction, something that would blend fear and entertainment in a subtle acknowledgement to the monster he'd now become, the Haunted Mansion.
I hope you don't have an aversion to darkness and cold. But you see, we spirits are sensitive to light, and every consideration has been given to our comfort here in this delightfully dreary place.
Billed as the most frightfully entertaining adventure of all, the mansion boasted ectoplasmic ghosts, delightfully dreary labyrinths, headless knights, howling dogs, and a perpetual levitation system. While Mickey doesn't make an appearance inside the mansion, his presence lingers like a phantom thanks to a series of hidden Mickeys found throughout the manor, like these dining plates covered in cobwebs and candle holders all arranged in the shape of mouse ears. From the moment it first opened its doors on August 9, 1969, the mansion was steeped in rumors and eerie legends. One tall tale said the original version of the attraction literally scared someone to death, causing them to have to water down the intensity. Other stories circulated among Disney cast members, like the belief that Madame Leota's spellbook was not a prop, but in fact an authentic grimoire from the 14th century. Cast members were reluctant to enter her seance room for fear of being cursed by an incantation from the book. Another legend, my personal favorite, claims that Walt Disney himself was buried in a secret graveyard on the mansion grounds. What is undeniably true, however, is that following the mansion's launch, the cheerful image of Disneyland and its lovable mascot were forever changed. But unlike his earlier flirtations with black magic, this time fans embraced his dark descent. When DisneyWorld opened its gates on October 1st, 1971 in Orlando, Florida, the Haunted Mansion was featured as a day one attraction. And with roughly 25,000 additional acres at his disposal, Mickey's malevolent shadow had near endless reach. By the turn of the 21st century, Mickey's empire had expanded to include a total of 5 theme parks in the US, including experimental prototype City of Tomorrow, otherwise known as Epcot, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and Disney's Animal Kingdom. Yes, the animal-abusing Steamboat captain now has an animal kingdom.
Man, that's pretty, isn't it?
Yep. So it's about this guy.
Sure is. Can I borrow a pair of toenail clippers?
I don't have any, man. I'm sorry.
Mickey also added 2 other parks abroad in both Tokyo and Paris, as well as a host of water parks, hotels, and entertainment districts. One of the additions, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, is the 13-story freefall down an elevator shaft at a stomach-churning 39 miles per hour.
This, as you may recognize, is a maintenance service elevator, still in operation, waiting for you. We invite you, if you dare, to step aboard, because in tonight's episode, you are the star. And this elevator travels directly to the Twilight Zone.
Before boarding the Doom Lift, guests must pass through the lobby of a 1930s-era Hollywood hotel on their way to an old library, where they're told a story of 5 passengers who mysteriously disappeared while riding the same elevator during a lightning storm. Footage taken from just before reveals a subtle detail that may confirm the source of the evil that preys on the group. The youngest member, a little girl with a bow in her hair, is seen holding a Mickey Mouse plush doll as she enters the lift with the rest of the damned. Debuting in 2004, Tower of Terror was part of an era where Mickey wasn't afraid to embrace the horror genre, as seen in shorts like Runaway Brain, which includes an homage to The Exorcist, Mickey getting a lobotomy, a rampaging feral Mickey controlled by the brain of a monster, and a King Kong ending with Mickey fighting the monster atop the Empire State Building to save Minnie. A 2013 animated short, Ghoul Friend, features a George Romero-esque reimagining of Goofy as an undead rotting corpse. Is this another glimpse into Mickey's warped mind? Seeing his closest friends as undead ghouls who want to eat him? Perhaps he was cracking under the weight of paranoia after 85 years in the spotlight. Or maybe it was a window into his guilty conscience over the subpar treatment of his employees. Because it was also in the 2010s that alleged inhumane working conditions led to an international controversy. Remember Mickey's steadfast rule not to allow any deaths at his parks? Well, the streak only lasted another 2 years after the Matterhorn incident. So Disney's lawyers came up with a crafty loophole. Their policy was to remove any dead bodies from the park before being declared dead. But even that could not last forever. There's nothing really even nefarious about it. When you have 140 million guests per year, there's gonna be a long list of fatalities. Everything from cardiac arrest, to blunt force trauma, to crushing, to brain aneurysms, to drowning, to electrocution. But the incident I find most disturbing occurred at Disneyland Paris, a pair of suicides by restaurant employees over a 2-month span back in early 2010. These self-assassinations were reportedly in protest of inhumane working conditions at the park. One man jumped in front of a train, the second man hanged himself but left a note before he passed. It read, "I don't want to work for Mickey anymore." News of the eerie note spread like plague across the internet, inciting a swarm of lurid, evil Mickey paintings and sketches on sites like DeviantArt. Unafraid to walk into a legal mousetrap from the notoriously lawsuit-happy Disney Corporation, these brazen artists reimagine Mickey as a snarling, blood-caked demon with sharp fangs, claws, and half-eaten ears. Not to be outdone, the creepypasta community was inspired to cook up some of their own tales of terror about the Maleficent mouse, and an entire subgenre of internet urban legends was born, along with dramatic readings of these stories that portrayed the Disney mascot as a timeless demon that feeds on young children.
Yes, Mickey Mouse ate Ronnie. He ate that other boy too.
Despite some genuinely inspired and unsettling interpretations, none were more enduring or effective than Suicidemouse.avi. Originally published on the Creepypasta Wiki on August 10th, 2010, less than 6 months after news of the Euro Disney Suicide Note went public, the story describes a lost episode from the Mickey Mouse library, which had been animated by Walt himself but was discarded because it was apparently too disturbing for human eyes. According to the post, which later inspired fan-made cartoons like this one, the cursed black and white episode shows Mickey walking past a cluster of nondescript buildings on a loop. Nothing terribly noteworthy, except the dismal expression on Mickey's face. His head is tilted, his posture is slumped, despondent. After a few minutes, the images go dark as the white noise continues, ultimately replaced by a strange gurgling cry on the soundtrack. When the images return, Mickey's face twists into a satisfied sneer. Blood-curdling screams and guttural noises punctuate the shift, while the buildings Mickey walks past become distorted, warping into an abstract blob that brings to mind the look of a degraded film reel. The screams get louder, piercing the viewer's eardrums as Mickey's face begins to fall apart. To quote the text, his eyes rolled on the bottom of his chin like 2 marbles in a fishbowl, and his curled smile was pointing upward on the left side of his face. As we near the end of the 9-minute cartoon, Mickey collapses before the screen cuts to black, leaving us with a cryptic message written in Russian that says, "The sights of hell bring its viewers back in." According to legend, a Disney employee who reviewed the footage went mad and later committed suicide, prompting a huge cover-up by the company. But legend has it that the video is out there, hence the title, Suicidemouse.avi. This eerie tale sparked a flood of new, even more deranged internet horror stories that warped Disney's most beloved character further out of shape. So many, in fact, that readers coined an entirely new subgenre, Disneypasta. Some were direct offshoots of the original Suicide Mouse story, like the short film Creepy Mouse, which follows a young man who is relentlessly stalked by an evil Mickey just moments after watching the infamous video on his laptop. A more tongue-in-cheek play on the Suicide Mouse lore saw YouTube creator Jester getting a phone call from the monstrous mouse himself, demanding that he give back a USB drive containing the lost episode outlined in the creepypasta story.
I was sent here by Walt Disney himself to retrieve that USB. You will give it to me.
You want the unreleased footage?
Yes.
But that's not fair. It should be released to public, don't you think?
Give it to me or die.
I'm not gonna lie, I would love if that happened to me. But the most unsettling entries under the Disneypasta umbrella abandoned the Suicide Mouse formula entirely, crafting their own heart-pumping mythos that plunges Mickey into even darker depths. A a fresh wave of Disneypasta stories landed inside the bowl, crafting new mythologies where Mickey isn't just eerie, he's dangerous. These include the Disney Mirror Ritual, an urban legend about a ritual performed by sneaking inside Cinderella's castle that promises to answer any question from your past, present, or future, like a fortune teller meets Bloody Mary. In order to complete the ritual, you have to evade these deadly creatures called the Falls, who take the form of distorted Disney mascots, including a grotesque nightmare version of Mickey Mouse.
Your only chance for escape is to estimate when it is reaching for you, then reach out and jab the figure itself with your blade. Do not miss. You won't get a second chance.
Another entry, exploring the park's after-hours magic, is don't try talking to Disney World mascots at closing time, a chilling riff on Five Nights at Freddy's that follows a single dad and his young son on their first trip to Disney World. As the park is set to close for the night, the dad asks Mickey to tell his son goodbye and quickly realizes that the mouse and his friends aren't people in costumes. They're living, breathing creatures with an appetite for raw flesh.
Looking back at Mickey, in the dark when I stared into his pupils, it seemed like the dark they were made of was swirling. I reached out to grab Mickey's arm, and when my hand made contact, the mask that I grabbed onto felt like it was constantly shifting around under my hands.
A Disney Mascot Followed Me Home has a similar what's really under the fur conceit. It's about a young boy who steals a figurine from a Disneyland gift shop. The boy leaves the park without consequence, but once he's home, he realizes he's being stalked by Mickey Mouse. For years after, the big-eared mascot lingers at the edges of his life, never too far behind, never completely out of sight.
You think this is a game? You think this is a game?
The story takes clear inspiration from another rogue rodent pasta, The Truth Behind Chuck E. Cheese, in which a teenager gets a job at Chuck E. Cheese and finds the animatronic mascot stalking him in his home at night. Arguably the most iconic of these Disney pastas is the one and only Abandoned by Disney, penned by a user named Slimebeast in 2013. The story follows an urban exploration of a supposed Disney resort in Emerald Isle, North Carolina called Mowgli's Palace, a jungle-themed hotel with staff in loincloths and a towering Indian palace at its centerpiece. To secure the land, Disney engaged in some shady land grabs and home seizures, bulldozing communities and silencing reporters before opening the resort, only to shut it down and take a loss on the project. Years later, the narrator, who lives just a few hours from Emerald Isle, ventures into the ruins armed with a camera and an old promotional map from when the project first broke ground. As he makes his way past the crumbling gates, he's greeted by an ominous sign that reads Abandoned by Disney. Inside, he finds rotting counters and desks, giant fake trees, and empty meat freezers, all of it smashed to hell and overrun by weeds. As he wades deeper through the wreckage, his heart catches in his throat when an 80-foot python slithers past the ruined reptile house, a final wild echo of Disney's chaotic exit.
I'm not hurt. I'm all right. I'm a lot tougher than some people think.
At the bottom of a darkened stairwell, the narrator's camera flash reveals a door labeled Character Prep. He forces it open and walks along the moldy carpet when a row of motion-activated lights reveals decaying Disney costumes hung on the wall. The most disturbing find is a Mickey Mouse costume lying on the floor like a murder victim. Its fur rotten, its colors reversed like a photo negative of the traditional Mickey Mouse. When the narrator tries to snap a photo, the Mickey Mouse costume stands up and asks a question that sends a shiver down his spine.
You wanna see my head come off?
The grotesque sound of tearing cloth and ripping flesh fills the room, and the narrator turns heel and makes for the exit when he finds a haunting message scrawled above the doorway. It reads, Abandoned by God. Stories like these sent shockwaves across every corner of the internet, pouring fuel on the Disneypasta pyres burning day and night. Long-time viewers, aka almost none of you, may remember when I did a couple of my own. While my stories didn't feature Mickey Mouse, they did reimagine iconic slices of Disney history, like a power outage on Pirates of the Caribbean and the last ever ride on the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror.
You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
While it's tempting to dismiss these Disneypasta stories as nothing more than digital urban legend, cheeky subversions of a world-famous character that'll never be part of an official Disney canon, it's important to remember that every legend is grounded in a kernel of truth. Bigfoot was believed to originally have been a large animal. Some believe the Loch Ness Monster was actually a giant eel. Mickey Mouse is no exception. 97 years of unparalleled access and influence had twisted Mickey's mind and spirit into knots that couldn't be undone. But one tale, long dismissed as an urban legend, turned out to have some real bite. A long-lost short film called Uncle Walt. For years, the film was spoken of only in whispers, a controversial parody film allegedly buried by the Walt Disney Company because it featured racist characters, crude humor, and some very questionable sequences, including topless centaurs from Fantasia working a red light district with Goofy as their pimp, and the 7 dwarfs from Snow White gathered around Mickey Mouse in worship as he lay sleeping in a mausoleum. But according to Lost Media Busters, it's all true. I genuinely thought this might just be another creepypasta for a while because it has all the elements of one, but apparently it's real. The short, which begins with images of Walt Disney at different ages and stages of his life, was directed by Academy Award nominee Robert Swarth, a special effects artist who worked on major productions. Several years before Hollywood came calling, Swarth created Uncle Walt as part of his UCLA course studies in 1964. Today, it's an official part of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences archives. And just last year, in August of 2024, a 16mm print of the film resurfaced on eBay, where it was purchased by an unknown user after being lost for decades. Uncle Walt is the first known work in history that explicitly links Mickey and his animated family to a sinister agenda, which might explain why the film was so hard to find for so long. But it also begs an important question. In all of the years between the Robert Swarth short and the rise of Mickey horror content in the 2010s, why hadn't we seen a single large-scale dismantling of the Disney mascot? The answer is something far more dangerous than any cursed image or lost episode. The culprit was Disney's lawyers.
There is a First Amendment, and the way you find out there's a First Amendment is you go through 13 years of federal court, and you get convicted of trademark violation, copyright infringement, business disparagement, unfair competition, and aggravated assault on Mickey Mouse.
That was Dan O'Neill, a renegade cartoonist who squared off with the Disney Corporation in court in the 1970s after launching Air Pirates, an underground comic strip that parodied Disney's characters like Mickey using violence, sexual innuendo, and biting social commentary. Disney took immediate legal action against O'Neill and his collaborators, which he mockingly called the Mouse Liberation Front. The case marked a watershed moment in the history of comic censorship because Disney was somehow able to convince the courts that his work didn't qualify as a true parody. For his trouble, O'Neill was convicted of 5 federal crimes, fined hundreds of thousands of dollars, and banned from ever drawing a mouse for public consumption again. Nearly 5 decades later, the House of Mouse had only sharpened its claws, a sobering fact that the metalcore band Ice Nine Kills learned firsthand in 2019 when they were banned from playing the Disney Springs House of Blues in Orlando, Florida. The official reason for the ban? Their use of violent and disturbing imagery. They clearly didn't realize that the band was just 4 clean-cut boys from Boston, Massachusetts.
Up next, we have 4 clean-cut boys from Boston, Massachusetts, here to sing their single, "The Fastest Way to a Girl's Heart is Through Her Ribcage."
Inc. fired back with a metaphorical middle finger, playing a different venue in Orlando a few months later, challenging Mickey to show up if he dared.
Excited to see if the mouse has the chutzpah, or balls rather, to make it to the show, because if he does, it's dead meat.
Well, Mickey did arrive for a special version of It Is the End played just for him, but somehow the rodent managed to scamper away with his life. Incidents like these are a testament to Disney's relentless control over its intellectual property and public perception, and its willingness to weaponize its financial and legal might to crush the opposition. Given that reality, it's no surprise that many of the artists of the 2010s and beyond have been a little more gun-shy to invoke the wrath of this billion-dollar corporation. If Disney had enough coin to sue someone into oblivion back in the 1970s and blacklist a beloved metal band in 2019, imagine what kind of legal firepower they could unleash on an independent artist in the age of Disney+. And so, as far as the public is concerned, the evil Mickey parodies have mostly been limited to anonymous internet users who aren't making a profit. In truth, these artists took a cue from O'Neill's Mouse Liberation Front and began working in secret, patiently waiting for the day when they'd be free to operate without the corporate constraints. That day was January 1st, 2024, the day Steamboat Willie and its titular character entered the public domain. The anticipation of that day fueled the community's enduring fascination with long-form, horror-themed Mickey Mouse projects where Disney's first mouse was recast as a homicidal maniac. Just one day after the ball dropped to mark the start of 2024, a horror comedy set on a New York City ferry boat was announced. The story centers on a group of passengers fighting to survive the murderous rampage of a mysterious killer in a captain's hat. The feature film, called Screamboat, will feature a slasher styled in the same vein as the classic Disney icon. They even got David Howard Thornton, the man who plays Art the Clown in the Terrifier series, as the furry executioner, who, according to this publicity still, seems to have a special way with harpoons. This is probably the most high-profile adaptation, but the beautiful thing about the public domain is that anyone can use it. Before that was released though, there was another Disney-adjacent slasher called The Mousetrap, released August 6th, 2024, where a 21-year-old and her friends working the late shift at an amusement park arcade are stalked by a killer in a Mickey Mouse costume.
There's blood all over the jungle gym.
Blood?
Yes.
Where the hell did he go?
There are also two bite-sized offerings that center around a deadly Mickey Mouse challenge. The horror short duology Mickey Mouse Halloween and Mickey Mouse 2, which dare players to summon Mickey by watching the Steamboat Willie cartoon, then whistling its signature tune after midnight. Once the ritual is complete, Mickey appears and proceeds to drown the participants in their own homes. On the gaming front, you can experience the Infestation firsthand with Infestation Origins. The co-op horror shooter pits you against a demented version of Steamboat Willie as you try to exterminate the mutated nest to prevent vermin outbreaks.
Nests. They're everywhere. We tried to take care of it ourselves, but things have escalated. Exterminators are our last hope. Please, help us before...
And here we thought 6-foot-tall rodents would be scary enough without the hat. And finally, later in 2025, you can explore Willie's Steamboat firsthand in Steamboat Willie Incident, a first-person survival horror experience that tasks the player with repairing the broken ship and steering it to safety while avoiding the tail and whiskers of a vintage creeper named Crazy Willie. Whatever flavor of Mickey madness suits your particular taste profile, I'm sure there will be plenty more bloodshed in his name in the months and years to come. And if you should ever find yourself on the wrong side of the murderous rodent's wrath, you might want to find your way to the nearest Ice 9 Kills concert. If you enjoyed this, I have an even crazier episode on another beloved rodent children's entertainment mascot, which is not a lot of such videos, but it's weird that it happened twice. Check out that video on the left. And if you love horror, make sure to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell, and select all notifications so you don't miss an upload, and I will see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.